Hello friends and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with the story in which our OP, after years of putting up with reactive neighbor dogs, finally takes a stand and things get a little heated. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. My neighbor cursed me for using my own yard. Well, I'm going to use it even more. So I've lived in a townhouse for the last 3 years. I live with my husband and two 60-pound dogs. For a bit of background, I got attacked by a dog just before my neighbors moved in 2.5 years ago, which left me with a fear of strange animals up until recently when I was able to work through my trauma with my therapist. My neighbors have 4 loud and reactive dogs, 3 Chihuahuas, and 1 Australian Shepherd, which charge the fence whenever they see someone on the other side and bark constantly. This had prevented me from using my backyard for the last 2 summers. Now that I've worked past the panic attacks and fear, I'm spending a majority of weekends in my yard and let my dogs go back and forth freely from the yard. My dogs have been well socialized and don't have any interest in the fence when the other dogs are reacting. Up until yesterday, when the neighbors' dogs came out, I would bring my dogs inside, but it would still mean a minute or so for their dogs to calm down. I would let my dogs back outside to play when the neighbors go back in. This was no big deal to me. Now cue Sunday. The neighbors let their dogs out, they react, I bring my dogs in, same old routine, except my neighbor curses me under her breath. "Keep your effing door shut." This is not the first time they've been rude either. This gets under my skin, considering her dog's reactivity is the reason I didn't feel comfortable in my own backyard. And it's not my dogs who are reactive. Plus, I've always been the one to bring my dogs in, not the neighbor. So I've started to be a bit petty. Now when the neighbor lets their dogs out, I stay out and play fetch with my dogs while her animals are going ape crap instead of bringing my dogs inside as I've always done. My dogs love it because they're getting more exercise than ever before. It's only been 3 days and my neighbor's exasperated and has to chase her dogs around the garden. Side note, they have another dog on the opposite side of them, which they're equally reactive to as well. I have patio furniture being delivered tomorrow, and I fully expect to enjoy my yard to the fullest this summer. After a week or two, I'll probably put up a visual blockade so her dogs can't see mine to be nice, but I'm not going to restrict my well-trained animals for her untrained ones any longer. Don't appreciate my courtesy? I won't give it. Update. Neighbors decided to cuss me out and tell me to go inside last night. I said no, but put the dogs inside because the neighbors were being aggressive. They said our dogs should be able to go outside to go inside. I said your dog's reactivity is not my problem, and they're more than welcome to use your yard. The fact they can't stop charging the fence long enough to pee is your issue and stood in the middle of my yard. They shouted at me to get the F inside. I told them to make me. A bit childish, I know. One told to meet them out front. I said, no, if you want something from me, climb over this fence yourself. They yelled a bit more and I didn't respond and they went inside after a minute. I think the neighbors have finally cracked a bit and it's only week 1. Not proud and honestly don't want to deal with this nonsense, but I'm not going to bend to a bully. Nothing petty about it. You have every right to use your property as you see fit. I'm glad therapy helped you get over your trauma. And our second story. Roommate pretends she's poor, so I'd give food to her. This happened recently. I was doing a semester-long college program at the happiest place on earth, living in an apartment owned by that company with 5 other roommates. This one girl, who I'll call Vivian, was extremely nice to me. I thought of her as a friend, and since I noticed she ate nothing but instant ramen, Go-Gurts, and Zipsicles, if you don't know what these are, they're much like Go-Gurts in the way they can freeze, melt, and unfreeze with no problem, only they're popsicles rather than yogurt. I started offering her my food to eat. She proceeded to eat half of the groceries I bought, but only my junk food items like Hot Pockets, Pop-Tarts, potato chips, soda, etc. I noticed that my food went missing only to find out she's eaten them. I had asked her to ask me first before eating anything, and she wouldn't even bother. I started to realize that she's one of those people who claim to be poor but weren't really. She'd give half her shifts away and thus make no money and would buy tickets to go to SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, and other expensive places. She also never invited me anywhere, nor did she ever talk to me unless I talked to her first. I would invite her places. She'd claim that she was too poor to spend any money and thus couldn't go with me. But if someone else were to invite her to the same place, then she'd suddenly find enough money to go with them. I realized I was being used for my food and free rides. She had no car, so I stopped letting her eat my food. This is where her personality changed. Every day she'd either pretend I didn't exist or randomly tell me I was an a-hole, a B, that I should stop talking because everything I said was stupid, etc. She acted like it was my fault. All she's been eating nowadays was instant noodles. She started to alienate the entire apartment through her negativity and always saying rude things to me. Before our program ended, we had 2 roommates quit and go home early, and 1 roommate switch apartments, leaving me, Vivian, and 1 other roommate left to clean the 6-person apartment before our move-out date. The other roommate and I didn't expect Vivian to help us clean anything since she hasn't cleaned anything all program long. The other roommate washes Vivian's dishes for her, otherwise they'd pile up in the sink, and the rest of us clean the common rooms by ourselves. But one night, while I was still awake at 3 a.m., but with my bedroom door closed and the lights off, I overheard Vivian talking on the phone about how she's going to secretly move out of the apartment while the other roommate and I were sleeping because she wanted to force us to clean the entire apartment by ourselves. She also claimed that we were the ones calling her names and bullying her, singling me out as her main abuser, saying that I was taking her food and spreading false rumors about her to the other roommates. But what? Well, a few days later, I wake up to find that Vivian really did move out of the apartment while we were asleep. However, she did leave an entire box of unopened Go-Gurt and Zipsicles behind. She also left some items scattered about in her room. I went to the person at housing and told her of my predicament. I've already had to clean out the rooms of the other roommates who left without throwing their crap away. I didn't want to do it again, especially since I myself had to leave in 3 days. She looked Vivian up for me in the system, and it turns out even though there's pretty much nothing in her room now, she never actually turned her key in. I know she's staying in a hotel, but still going in for work, so I'm assuming that she eventually plans on coming back for her food. Well, I decided it was time for me to clean out the fridge. I went back to my apartment, grabbed a trash bag, and threw every single little thing. I took Vivian's Zipsicles and Go-Gurts and put them in my bag. I put a note on the fridge addressed to my remaining roommate about how I've cleaned out the entire fridge and pantry. 2 days later, in the middle of the night, I hear Vivian walk into the apartment. I hear the fridge doors opening and closing. I hear the cabinet doors opening. I hear her leave the apartment. I walk out and find the note that I'd written torn in half. I go back to my room and pack the Go-Gurts and Zipsicles into my bag. They made for excellent snacks on my 8-hour drive home the next day. I feel like not enough happened to Vivian. However, taking her food was a small but surely satisfying trick. And our last story. Entitled neighbor is mad we took down playground on our property. So me and my fiance recently moved into a new house. It's small, but the big yard was the real selling point for us. I love spending time outdoors, so it felt like the perfect fit. The only thing was the previous owners had turned the backyard into a full-on playground. We're talking slides, swings, monkey bars, the works. It was a pretty impressive setup, but here's the thing. Neither of us have kids, and neither of us want kids. None of our family or friends have kids either. So this playground, totally unnecessary. And it took up most of the yard. My fiance and I decided to take it down. Thankfully, we were able to salvage most of the equipment and ended up donating it to the local day center. The stuff was in great condition, definitely not cheap, and it felt good to see it go to a place where it would actually be used. And that's where she comes in, the entitled Karen next door. A few days after we'd taken down the playground, I was home feeling under the weather while my fiance was at work. There's a knock at the door. I drag myself over and open it, and there she is, arms crossed, already annoyed. "Why did you take down the playset?" she snaps, like I've done something unforgivable. Now, I have no clue who this woman is, so I ask, who are you? She gives me this look like I'm the one being rude. I live next door, she says, clearly irritated. Why did you take down the playset? I tell her flat out, we don't need it. We don't have kids. She just stares at me, stunned, like I just admitted to a crime. Well, my kids like to play on it, she says, as if that's a valid reason for us to keep it. At this point, I'm starting to lose my patience. Look, I don't want a giant playground in my backyard. I also don't want kids running around screaming back there. Her face goes red. You can't just take it down when there are people who use it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's my backyard and I can do whatever I want with it. Besides, even if I wanted to put it back up, I can't. I gave all the stuff away. That's when she really flipped. I'm not going anywhere until you promise to put it back up, she shouts, standing there like I'm about to give in. I had enough at this point, so I closed the door in her face, but she kept knocking, relentless. I called the police. The cops showed up pretty quickly, and when they arrived, she was still outside, pacing back and forth on our porch like a guard dog. They listened to her rant about how her kids deserved to use our backyard, but the officers weren't having it. They told her she had no right to demand anything and that she needed to leave immediately. She tried arguing for a bit longer, saying things like, it's unfair and we should have asked the neighborhood first. But eventually they threatened her with trespassing charges if she didn't leave. That shut her up pretty quick. Needless to say, we haven't had any more knocks from Karen. Turns out a few neighbors had dealt with her entitlement before, so they weren't surprised when I told them what happened. Not a lawyer, but if you allow children to play in your yard and they have an accident, surely you could be sued. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.